Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Jmore Live. I want to wish all of our viewers here in Baltimore and around the country and possibly even the world a very happy Hanukkah. I'm Jonathan Oleisky, and I'm super excited to welcome a fabulous rabbi, a wonderful community leader, a superb educator, and just a wonderful soul, Rabbi Dana Saroken, who is the spiritual director and founder of the Soul Center at Beth El here in Baltimore, Maryland, where she also serves as what we'll call a traditional rabbi for the synagogue. Rabbi Saroken, welcome to Jmore Live.
Thanks so much, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to be here. And Chag Urin Sameach, happy Hanukkah.
Yeah, it's Hanukkah. We're going to talk about Hanukkah in a little bit, but first, let's talk about this thing called the Soul Center, because I am one of these people in Baltimore. I just don't know much at all about the Soul Center. So could you inform, educate, tell me about what it is you and your colleagues have built? What is the Soul Center?
So first, Jonathan, I would like to extend an invitation to come anytime. And
that'd be fun.
Yeah, it's an amazing place, actually. And I think it's an extraordinary concept. We started the Soul Center 5.5 years ago. And it was really a response to people that, the vast majority of Jews, when asked about their Jewish life, will say, or about their Judaism, will say, I'm spiritual, but not religious. That was sort of
right.
the mantra that was all too often heard. And so this Soul Center really was a response to people who felt very comfortable with spirituality and pursuing spirituality, but were either not interested in their sort of religious identity or wisdom, or not practicing or not growing in that way, or just feeling disenfranchised, sort of underwhelmed by what they were seeing in the traditional Jewish world. And so the Soul Center was really a response to all of that. And it was a way to bring religion into spirituality and to bring spirituality into our religious lives. And so 5.5 years young and 5.5 years old, I suppose, at this point. Yeah, it's been a beautiful experiment.
So talk to me a little bit more about, how does someone access it? So, okay, do you have to be a member of Beth El to access it? Is it open to the community? Do you want people to join? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So actually, it's an interesting question that you're asking, Jonathan, because when we were conceiving of the idea, the truth is that what was super important to us was space. We wanted to have a physical place where people could come to and feel adequate in whatever it is that they know or don't know. And we wanted to have a physical place where people could sort of come in and exhale, right? The world that we created this in,
I like that.
5.5 years ago, it was busy, and it was sometimes frenetic, and it was chaotic, and it was a lot. We were moving at a quick pace always. And so this was really a sort of creation for people that were living in that world, right? A busy, overwhelming world where you sometimes just needed to hit the pause button and to just turn off the ringer and to be present with other people, and to sort of say, Dayenu, it's enough. I can like exhale,
Right.
So our physical space also has a door, back to your question, that is very intentionally leading directly into the Soul Center space. So you don't walk through the synagogue to get there. You literally open the door from the parking lot, and you're in the Soul Center, which is 3 rooms. The first room is our sort of living room area, coffered ceiling, chandeliers, pretty furnishings. It actually looks so surprising when people walk in that they oftentimes will sort of stand bewildered.
Where am I?
Just sort of say some sort of wow,
So it's not like going to shul. It's so different, right?
No. It's intentionally different. It is, even the design firm that we've worked with, we went with someone who does residential, design and decorating, because we wanted it. I wanted it to feel like home. It should feel comfortable. It should feel beautiful. it should feel like you're walking into like your home, but it doesn't have any clutter, right? Like there's
Yeah,
nothing
I
to
like
do
that.
except to just sort of go, oh, it's all
I
okay.
like that. I like that.
Mhm. So
So,
the external door, you don't have to be a member of Beth El. You don't have to be a member
wow.
of any synagogue.
Wow.
Everyone is welcome. Jewish, non-Jewish partners, non-Jewish, like everyone is welcome. What we
Wow. How
promise to give to
refreshing
every
is that?
person.
Good for you.
Mhm. Our promise is that we bring Jewish wisdom, right? We give people the opportunities to foster their sense of spirituality, of Jewish, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, and to do everything that they do in a safe space that sort of incorporates different parts of their lives and things that they want to spend time doing, but might not necessarily have time for doing it all.
Do people pray in the Soul Center or not so much? I don't know if anyone's asked you that recently.
I love talking to you, Jonathan. Yeah. So it's really interesting. We did not start with prayer. And in fact, for many years, we weren't sure that we wanted to go there.
Wow. Okay.
What we wanted people to be able to access was Jewish wisdom, the opportunity to learn, to be inspired, to engage, to connect with God, with themselves, with each other. And we weren't really sure if prayer was sort of going to be too much, right? Like, how would we do prayer in a way that people would feel, comfortable and excited and inspired and all of those things that we wanted them to feel. So basically, it took us many years, and then we started something called Sheer Joy. And Sheer Joy was, if you sort of think of a Friday night experience, right? Everything we do is a very curated experience. We have like breathed love into like everything that we invite people to come to, whether it's virtually or in person.
Yeah.
And so what we actually started with was Sheer Joy. So when you sort of come in for Sheer Joy, like you sort of imagine, like from the time you park your car, there are like beautiful poems, like, or beautiful quotations on the side. There's like mixed drinks that you can have.
Oh, fun.
Like ciders with rum, or fireballs, and like everything. There's always like sort of 2 fun drinks that you can bring into services with you.
Wow.
And then there are fun treats. So like on the way in and on the way out, you'll get like a delicious treat of some kind. Yeah. And then they're like, imagine a room you walk into, lights are dimmed, fairy tale, like the fairy lights and the ceiling, pipe and drapes. Thank you, Mike Blondell and Charlene Sherman. And just a really beautiful space. And then we mix things up. So there's some traditional prayer to secular music. There's some songs that are like thematically connected. So instead of, like, as an example, instead of the V'ahavta or V'hayayim Jmore, like different sections of the Shema, we might take that out or do it to a song that like resonates, like teach your children well, right? Like, so that prayer is about like how you're going to like teach your children. When are you going to like connect with the things that matter most? So it's all very intentional and fun. And people leave there sort of flying high because it all feels like, I don't know, it feels exciting, and it feels like it's comfortable, yet also like unexpected. It feels like it's safe, but also like out of your comfort zone, but it feels good. It's like a lot of different beautiful things. And then we moved into prayer in a daily capacity during the pandemic. It's still a little bit differently done. It's every morning we do something called morning gratitude. And morning gratitude is from 8:45 to 9:15. And it's a combination, right? Because we tried to figure out during the pandemic, like what was going to do for people. And so what we do every day is we like start with Moda Ani Lefanecha, like, thank you, God, for returning my soul to me, to us.
Now, can I ask, is this in person or is this on Zoom for Beth?
No,
in person.
Some things are in person, but we've been really safe during the pandemic. We've taken that very seriously. So morning gratitude is both on Zoom and on Facebook Live every day. We have an amazing group of people that come, and it's a combination of like prayer, meditation, Torah, and connecting, and like a lot. Like we actually take out a gratitude journal, at every morning. And like, I just happen to have mine here. Like
Look at
it's
that.
stuffed. So every day
Wow.
you're actually doing thoughtful work on finding blessings.
Okay, so I have two questions. Where'd the idea come from? That's the first question. Because
For the Soul Center or Morning
for the
Gratitude?
Soul Center, no, for the Soul Center.
Um,
This is your baby, right? You
it is
birthed
my
this,
baby.
yes.
Yes. I
It's your
birthed it.
child.
So, it probably was deeply impacted by two things. One was the Pew study, the Pew report that came out then, which basically, sort of took my breath away and terrified me,
Because
just
you're a
saying that
rabbi, right?
because I'm
You're
a
a rabbi.
rabbi, right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. I'm a rabbi. And the thing that I love, to like, deep in my soul that like
Yeah.
drives me and motivates me and grounds me, I felt like, like why are people not feeling excited, inspired, by Judaism? Like what are
Right.
we, in synagogues as Jewish
Right.
leaders, like what are we not doing right that people are either walking away or they're not really interested in what we're doing? And so like
Yeah.
for me, that was actually really interesting when they were saying I'm spiritual but not religious, was that, why was that? And how were they fostering that sense of spirituality?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And why were
Mm-hmm.
people proud to say I'm spiritual, but quick
Right.
to say, but not religious, like how
Right.
could we respond to that? And so this was really a way. And I think the other part is that like, and again, it's sort of funny to think back, but if you think back, 5.5 years ago,
Right.
to 2016, people didn't really have so much time. And in synagogue life, one of the things that you really do notice, especially, when are, living in a fast-paced world, is that a lot of things actually just don't really work into our schedules anymore. And they may
Correct.
have in 1980 when I was in school, but it's nowadays like kids have to play sports after school, and if they don't go to practice, they can't go to the game. And at
Right.
night, most 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds and 30-year-olds can't show up at 8 o'clock at night to go to an adult education program,
Right.
right? Or a
Correct.
Saturday morning. Like it's hard to find a way to fit Judaism in. And so this is really
Yeah.
like we're off hours, it's a way
How
to really,
cool.
yeah.
Cool. So my second question is, do you have colleagues from around the country calling you and saying you're doing what at Beth El in Baltimore? And how do I
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah. It's funny, but I
But
this week alone, I had, it's Wednesday. I've already had two of those phone calls. One from a
that's
synagogue in
amazing.
California and one from a synagogue in Canada. So yeah, people are really, it's not only, it's rabbis that call, and sometimes it's lay leaders of their
Yeah.
synagogue, presidents of their
Yeah.
synagogue, or just people that are like, I want to do this in my community. So we're trying to
Yeah.
figure that out. That's sort of our, one of the things that we're really trying to think through is, do we sort of help people create their own soul centers, or do we create sort of a headquarter and allow people from all over to sort
Fascinating.
of, yeah.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. And I can't help but wonder. So we talked earlier in the week in advance of today. I think I told you I'm a RK, a rabbi's kid. My father, may his memory be for a blessing, passed away in October. But Dad was a graduate, just like you were, of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, JTS, the flagship seminary for the conservative movement in New York. I'm wondering, like, did they teach you how to do this at JTS? Or are they doing that today? I hope they are, for the next generation of conservative rabbis.
It's a really funny thing. I think, look, there's so many outcomes of the pandemic. I think many,
Yeah.
which, are not yet revealed, and we're not really, I don't necessarily know that we're finished learning the impact of the pandemic on Jewish life or religious life.
Fair enough. Yeah, absolutely.
But I would say that, there is an element, I think, I'm going to sort of use the word stuckness, that like in some ways, it feels good to do what we've always done. That feels safe and it feels secure and it feels familiar, and people like all of those things. And, the challenge is that that wasn't necessarily working, especially for the younger generations. And by younger, I'm going to say like all the way up to their, like 60s. And so the question is like, how can we provide people, with the things that they love about traditional Judaism, which we should provide, and also the creativity to say like, let's not be scared to also do things a little bit differently sometimes, and to see how that works.
Very, very interesting. So let's shift a little bit to Hanukkah, because it's Hanukkah, and not that this is like stump the rabbi, but whenever I'm talking to a rabbi, I always like to kind of go to places where people just aren't comfortable going, right? So I don't know if you saw it. I saw this fascinating article in the Forward this week that talked about how, and quote, the Maccabees would roll over in their graves if they saw how we celebrate the holiday today. I don't know if you saw that.
That's so interesting. I didn't, but I'm imagining that that's true.
Yeah.
It's also like, it's a funny thing, right, Jonathan? Like in some ways, the Maccabee gang, or the brothers, were really, also revolting, not only against King, Antiochus, but also they didn't want a secular Judaism.
Right.
They were not pleased with, the way that many Jews were living then, which wasn't religious enough for them, sort of connecting to that, like, sort of how do you do things a little bit differently? And so in some ways, it's an interesting holiday when you sort of dig down deep, but yeah, it's a beautiful holiday. It's a beautiful holiday. It's an important holiday. And I think it resonates.
Drill down there, can you? Why is it important? Why is it important to us?
It's so funny that you asked that, because I was actually thinking about that this morning. Like, I feel like one of the challenges of the holiday is like literally every night at some point, I'm like, oh gosh, I have to get a gift, right? Like I got to go get my kids gifts.
The expectation, right? Yeah.
I know. By the way, super funny, quick story, but it was like a few years ago. I don't know. It was probably 5 years ago. And Hanukkah happened to coincide with Christmas.
Right.
And it was like the last night of Hanukkah and Erev Christmas.
Yeah.
And I, of course, like didn't have any gifts left. I mean, our gifts are small. They're like socks or, candies or whatever. But I had nothing left to give my kids. And I didn't want it to like peter out. So I ran to Target, and I think they closed at like 10 o'clock at night. And it was probably 9:45. I mean, it was like just, so I go, I'm with my girlfriend, and it was actually a moment I will never forget. It was total desperation. It was total desperation. Like, in fact, they were like, there was like nothing left on the shelves of Target. People are like mulling through the Rubik's cubes that have like stickers missing and like all of these funny things. But like, we were all desperate together. And I turned to my friends and I was like, I have finally found my people. Right. Like, it was like all the people that at 9:45 were like, oh no, I gotta go get something.
Well, you could have had a minion probably.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say this about Hanukkah, look, if we don't let the sort of consumeristic, part of us drive the holiday, it's a holiday that's actually a beautiful opportunity to think about, like, what does it mean to experience things that happen in our world as miracles? Right? What does it mean to bring light into our lives? Like, how can we, right? How can I today, this Wednesday, like, how can I bring more light into my life? And like, how can I bring more light into like the Jewish community? How can I bring more light into the world? Right. And I think in some ways, it can give us the opportunity, right? Like back to that, the Maccabee story and the Maccabee brothers rolling, but like, they were fighting for a Judaism that they really believed in. And I think in so many ways, like, many Jews feel really strongly about their Judaism, but one of the questions it can also sort of lead us to think about is like, how do those feelings manifest themselves in our day-to-day lives? Like, are we doing something to, sort of, help move Judaism, to help, transmit Judaism, to help share our love for Judaism? And so I think in some ways, like, it is about miracles. It's about God's help. It's about recognizing that like sometimes the small things are deserving of celebration. You know, there are beautiful messages and ideas in there that are far more important than the Rubik's cubes.
So what's your favorite part of the holiday? You know, is a rabbi, is a mom, is a spouse?
Yeah.
What's your favorite part? What do you like the most about it?
So Jonathan, anyone who really knows me is going to be like, are you kidding? Because I'm like a total like beat your heart Jew, actually, at my core. Like my favorite holiday is really Yom Kippur, like by far my favorite.
But we can talk about
and
that
I also
next.
like to shop.
Okay. There we go.
There was once actually a great article talking about articles. There was once a great piece that said that like, you know, you're either a Yom Kippur Jew or you're like a Purim Jew, right? Like I happen to be like a Yom Kippur Jew. But I love Hanukkah. I love that it brings light into darkness. I love that it gives us the opportunity to really just to create time to sing and to play, right? There's a beautiful halacha, like there's a beautiful like excerpt that Joseph that was written in the Shulchan Aruch that says that that you know it's forbidden to eulogize and it's forbidden to fast on Hanukkah. I sorry to all intermittent fasters that are listening in. But it is permitted to work. And it goes on to say right after that the women took upon themselves the stringencies, or the women had a custom which was not to do work while the candles were still burning. And so like this week, I'm actually really enjoying that idea that like I'm lighting and then like my tendency is to like go clean up from dinner or to like go unpack my kid's bag. But what it's really saying is like, sit, like enjoy the light, right? Enjoy the light in a world that's been turned upside down for the last year and a half. And like play again and sing again and celebrate miracles. Like that's beautiful.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. You must be a rabbi. I like that a lot. So let's talk about something that's on my mind these days. So I kind of want to talk about the intersection of spirituality, mourning, and God. Whenever I talk to a rabbi, I have to talk about God because some people are not comfortable doing that. You know, I told you I'm in mourning for my father. You know, Shiva Shloshim was just a whole new experience to me. It was kind of like, you know, Shiva was mourning in slow motion, and it's like the week was never going to stop, and yet it did. And I think I went into the whole mourning process not really understanding what it is and was about, because I had never done it obviously for a parent before. You know, it's hard, but I'm trying to figure out like, where is God in this? You know, every day, because my father would want me to, and because it's the right thing to do. You know, I go to Minyan and I say Kaddish, and we know that Kaddish is really it's a celebratory prayer. It's not about death so much, so to speak. And correct me if I'm wrong there.
So, you know, it's interesting that you say that, Jonathan. I think in some ways for me, Kaddish, it's almost like an umbilical cord or like a heartbeat, right? Like there's something so, I don't know, I think there's something so powerful and honestly quite spectacular about like, you know, even if you don't know the words to Kaddish, if you think about it, like Yitkadal v'yitkadash Merabah, like there's something that like,
it's powerful.
It's enchanting.
It's powerful. Yeah,
it's powerful.
No, it is.
And I think really like, it's not, and I always have like an interesting reaction to celebration and death. Like a lot of times people will call me, or like before I bury someone that they love, they'll say like, Rabbi, we really want it to be a celebration. And there have been occasions, but there are very, very few that I'm like, yep, I got it. Right. Like someone lived to be 102, you know, someone lived to 90 and like did you know, there are occasions where I'm like, you know what, Dainu, you know, again, like everything you could ever wish for, this person was able to see, do, accomplish, be. But a lot of times I think like it's also, sometimes when we say celebration, it's because people don't really like to feel sad. And if I can push away the sadness or the discomfort or the feeling of vulnerability, right? That we are inevitably going to feel every time we sit at Levinson's, or every time, we sort of come close to death. If we push it away, it will hunt us down, it will chase us, it will follow us, and it will always be there sort of lingering, right? But that's why I think in some ways, death isn't a celebration. It is almost always, it is always a loss. And there tends to always be grief that comes with it. So even if you had a relative, and many people do, that they couldn't stand, right? Or that they were disappointed by, or abandoned by, or whatever it may be in their lifetimes, the truth is that there's even the loss of what wasn't, right? That person that was never the brother that you wanted him to be, or the parents that you wanted them to be, right? Like there is always a loss to acknowledge.
Sure.
And I think that what you were saying before, the Kaddish, and it was so beautiful to listen to you saying, like, I'm honoring my dad in this way because he would have wanted that, right? So I think in some ways, for anyone who's listening, there's a lot to be learned from that idea, Jonathan, that a lot of times nowadays, people don't want to impose on the younger generations. It's sort of the sense of like, oh, they're so busy, right? But it is okay to say, I would really like for you to sit Shiva for me, whether it's 3 days or 7 days, articulate what it is you want, right? And then this idea of, and by the way, after that, I would like for you to, like, every year on my yard site, the anniversary of my death, like, I would like for you to go to synagogue. I'd like for you to light the candle. I'd like for you, right? Like, so the idea that you raised before, Shivas, is traditionally 7 days. Then you've got Shloshim, which is 30 days. And then you've got 11 months minus 1 day that you're officially a mourner.
Which is a long cycle. It's like, I've got a long road ahead. It's not short.
It is. But I will say this, that the more you can do of that cycle and of that process, when you come out of that year, you will feel as if, instead of carrying the pain and the regret and the sadness, you will feel like what you carry is that sense of being blessed to have shared that love, or to have been touched by that person. And the idea that you're carrying something, right? The best of what he or she or they was. And it's your job now to sort of carry their light and to perpetuate their values and to, uphold and transmit their legacy. So I do think that it is hard for people, especially as people are dying for a lot longer than they've ever died for before, right? So one of the inclinations that people, oftentimes will, sort of be driven by is the sense of like, Rabbi, we've really grieved along the way, which I actually think is true. People are doing a lot of anticipatory grief that they haven't done before. In many ways, they are also doing sort of ambiguous loss, right? Sort of that sense of like, when your parent has dementia, your parent has Alzheimer's, your parent has, a Parkinson's type of disease, you are losing that person that you love or in relationship with.
Right.
Every day, or, as things move. And so there's a part of you that, like, your heart is actually breaking along the way. But I think even if you've experienced that grief, the other reality is that when you actually do lose that person that you love, even if you've grieved before, you still, I think, need space and time and support to say, wow, it happened, right? That thing that I was dreading, that thing that I saw coming and kept waiting for the call, like it's happened. And then to mark that moment too. So I'd say to anyone who's listening in, Jonathan, that, like, even though it's hard to keep showing up for Kaddish, or even though it's hard to, do those things, it gives us space to really do some remembering, reflecting, and then to do some healing, which I think we can't rush through.
Yeah, no, very well said, Rabbi. Very, very, very nice. Very nice. So in the last minute or two before we wrap up, so how do people find you? Do they email you? Do they call you? Do they just walk through the door at the Soul Center? What's the best way for them to experience more of Rabbi Dana Saroken in the Soul Center?
So I feel like I can be found anytime, anywhere. So, I really do sort of, I'm on the Bima at Beth El.
Right.
I'm on Zoom I'm on Zoom every day doing some class or another. Actually, just for fun, if anyone doesn't have plans tomorrow
Yeah.
night, one of the things that we are doing is we're doing a Share Joy Hanukkah at 6:30 until 7:15. But it's actually, as I shared before, everything's always sort of like mixed up a little. It's not what you would think.
Right.
And so we're actually going to start out. We've got 2 drinks that we're going to be making with the mixologist on Zoom, and then we're going to be lighting the Chanukiot, and then we're going to be singing the traditional, Hanukkah songs, and then songs about light. And so
Lovely.
we've got 5 different people involved in Share Joy, and anyone is welcome to come. We would love for people to join us. And you can look at bethelbalto.com. You can look at Soul Center Baltimore.
Okay.
And
Wonderful.
please, keep in touch, stay connected.
All right. And I thank you for your invitation. At some point, I'll come walk through the door. Looking forward to seeing a totally different Jewish experience from everything you've said. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. Happy Hanukkah. And enjoy all of your success with the Soul Center. And I look forward to continuing the conversation at one point.
Thank you. Oh.
Yeah. One last thing.
I totally forgot. January 14th.
Okay,
January
what's that?
14th. We are doing something called Wit, Wine, and Wisdom. Bruce Feiler, who is one of my all-time favorite thinkers and authors, is going to be, I'm going to be interviewing him.
Oh, fun.
And if you want to know how to create a healthier family, how to create a thriving home, he's New York Times bestseller, and it should be a wonderful night. So
wonderful. All right. So you heard it here. Rabbi Dana Saroken, the Soul Center, Beth El. Everyone have a happy Hanukkah. Rabbi Saroken, thank you so much. Be well. Bye-bye.